he moved to the Politecnico di Torino, where he's teaching computer ethics. So it's suggesting a way to make information technology more ethical and more connected with society. He's a member of a number of committees dealing with the ethical dimension of information technology and computing at international, European and international level. So I think that's probably enough to introduce you. And I leave you the floor, Norberto. So welcome here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you for inviting me. This is very important. This is my first time in Cyprus. It's there is an island. It's a very beautiful island. And this is Xenovelea, showing to the young people what is true and what is false. And probably information technology now is the new Xenovelea. So we should be very careful looking at what's going on in the evolution of this technology. You can see this fresco in the library of El Escorial in Madrid, but the painter is Pellegrini. It's an Italian painter of the Italian Renaissance. And I chose this picture because it's the symbol of the speech of today, we'll say. What is true or what is false. About myself, as Fabio said, I'm coming from Italy, and my first 25 years of the 50 years in information technology was spent in designing computers and digital devices in Olivetti. This is based in Ivrea in Piedmont, Italy. Then I got a computer science degree from the University of Torino, and then a philosophy doctor from Uppsala University in computer ethics. So I'm teaching to engineers now at Politecnico of Torino at the doctorate school and introducing engineers to what we call the ars interrogandi, the capability of putting questions, not just to find solution, to find answer, but putting questions. This is the main goal of a computer ethics course. As you know, Olivetti is no more there, but in this story is a continuation because Ivrea was named the industrial city of the 20th century, is a UNESCO World Heritage. So I invite you to visit Ivrea and visit the Olivetti Museum, of course. But let's go to the core of this discussion today. I came in touch with this kind of subject in around 1983. At those time, we got a research lab in California, in Silicon Valley, an Olivetti research lab. And I got in touch with the Computer Professional for Social Responsibility. It was an organization originated from Stanford University. So coming from Olivetti, that is a company with this, let's say, very famous story about social responsibility. So it's not just famous for innovation, Olivetti, but also for social innovation. So all the profit generated by company was reinvested in the company itself, and the vision was to build a utopian community. The idea of a community of Adriano Olivetti was this one. So when I got in touch with Computer Professional Social Responsibility, I was thinking, hey, this is my place. So I start knowing a lot of very interesting people to study this subject, and I happen to teach computer ethics. Now, I like to concentrate in one slide the entire conversation of today, and this is the summary. So if you have other things to do, if you are in a hurry, this is enough. So, but if you have more time, we can start a conversation. So the summary is information technologies have come to shape society and the planet in alarming ways. By now, they are an integral part of the challenges of the Anthropocene. To face these challenges, this area, the entire production chain, from data, information, and knowledge, must move to a systemic view of the infosphere. By developing future complex socio-technical systems that are socially desirable, environmentally sustainable, and ethically acceptable. This is the challenge in front of us. Okay, so this is just in one picture, the entire story. If we have more time, we can go in more details. And I will discuss also about artificial intelligence. So this is the conclusion already. And my proposal is let's not call it artificial intelligence. Just avoid use this term because it's misleading. And I propose to use the term dynamic algorithms that calibrate with big data. This is the more precise definition of data. We are living in discontinuity now, from algorithmic software to statistical software. And we will go in more detail later on. But our role, computer expert, computer professionals, of course they know how a system is composed and how it works. It's time to ask how and why to design it, who will use it, for what purposes, and up to the crucial questions, whether to design it or not. So the fundamental question. Yesterday, the main researcher of Google resigned and said, no, I cannot do that. So it's a good example of a deontology of computer professional. Up to the crucial question, where to design it or not. This is the most difficult question. Then the final part of my conversation will be dedicated to slow tech, taking suggestion from slow food, good, clean, and fair. So the question is it possible a computer technology, digital technologies that are good, clean, and fair? This is the question. And for facing this challenging in front of the climate change, also digital technology can be useful for consuming less, so using bits for consuming less, but also vice versa, consuming less for using bits, so in itself. So this is the entire story. Now, if you give me, let's say, some minutes, we can go in more detail. This is the menu, let's say, of today, an introduction, then a core dedicated to artificial intelligence, quote unquote, planet, and slow tech. The main question when we talk about the introduction of this conversation is introduce the term socio-technical systems. So technology is not neutral. Technology and society co-shape each other. So when we design a system, we are designing society, and vice versa. When we use systems, those architecture will change society. And it's what's going on right now about true and false. This is the first handbook about computer ethics introduced in the United States, in 1991. In computer science department, for computer scientists, you have to follow a course in your curricula dedicated to computer ethics. This is the first handbook in 1985. This is the entire story of computer ethics, but just to give you the main milestones. The beginners, say the founders, Norbert Wiener, the founders of cybernetics also, but is considered the father also of computer ethics, because it was the first one putting those questions to computers. Then Joseph Weizenbaum, that we will see later on, and then all the main contributors to this debate, up to the current researchers, Sarah Spiekerman, one of the main researchers in the area about ethical IT innovation, how to incorporate ethics into the design teams. So Sarah is one of the main contributors to this area. And then this, what we call proactive computer ethics, what we can do before, when we design, while we design a system, not later on. So this is against the mantra of Silicon Valley that say, disrupt first, ask question later. No, we want to put question before. So this is slow tech. So the limits. Slow tech is taking into account the limits. In our history, we have seen several kind of limits. In the enlightenment, of course, the sky was limits. In the 1972, we introduced this concept of the Earth is the limits, with the limits to grow. The Club of Rome report, this is the beginning of the environmental reflections. Today, we are talking about the limits of ourselves, the limit of humans. So probably we are touching the limits of human knowledge with the information technologies. The dream of a reasoning machine is very old. We can go to the 12th century, Ramon Lull, a machine, a device that can say what is true, what is false. Again, Zeno. Leibniz, the dream of a system for human knowledge. No? Of course, was not able to design this kind of system, but he was able to introduce, for example, the binary system that we use in the today computers. George Jacquard, 1801, the first input able to control machines. And this is the beginning of automation, let's say, one of the first examples of automation. And of course, we got also the debate about jobs, what are the consequences about work of this automation. The analytical engine from Babbage, 1834, the first attempt to build a machine with a store, they didn't call CPU, they called it the mill. No? Was, in a way, was a complete computer with input, memory, elaboration, and output, but was mechanical, so it was impossible to build. We had just a prototype, a single prototype in the Science Museum in London. But a curiosity, the first presentation of this machine was made in Torino. By visiting Torino, was invited by the Congress of Italian Scientists, Charles Babbage, and in the room there was Luigi Federico Menabrea, that took very well detailed notes about the Babbage machine, but those notes was in French, because at that time in the Savoy Kingdom they were speaking French. So these notes from Menabrea was taken by Babbage back to England and given to Ada Byron, that translated those notes into English. So the first book, computer science book, was born in Torino, I would say, written by Menabrea and translated by Ada Byron. And as you know, Ada Byron was the first programmer in the history, because that woman was able to design an algorithm for the Babbage machine. So the first programmer in history is a woman, Ada Byron. We have to wait 1 century to enter into our current era. And with this mathematician, Turing, he got the idea of a universal machine where you just change the memory of the machine changed the function. This is the first idea, the first time in history that we use the same device, change the memory of the device is doing different things. But Turing was making the PhD at Princeton, and in Princeton the tutor of Turing was John von Neumann. And John von Neumann got the funding for building the first electronic computers. We are inside the Manhattan Project. So the beginning of the history of computing is strongly related to the Manhattan Project, to John von Neumann, but the idea is by the PhD student with John von Neumann, Alan Turing. Alan Turing was introducing this, that is well known in those days when you talk about artificial intelligence, the imitation game. So he never used the term artificial intelligence. He used this, let's say, kind of experimental experiment where it is a person dialing with another person, and a person A and person B. And person A is substituted with a machine, and person B is still a human. When the person C is not able to distinguish between the two replies from B, A or B, then this is acceptable as we know, as a machine is able to be enough to win the Turing test, to overcome the Turing test. but it's not intelligence. It's able to imitate, so the imitation game. So this is the machine that we use today. We have input, memory, elaboration, and output. This machine we use for executing algorithms, but this is no more true. The traditional machine was executing algorithm designed by us, and into memory we load the code that is incorporating the algorithm and the data. But this is no more true with the new kind of machines that we call today artificial intelligence. The algorithm in itself is dynamic and calibrates itself a long time with a lot of data. So we are still designing algorithms, but the algorithm that is in practice executed by the machine is not the original algorithm designed by the human. So this is the little difference between, let's say, traditional software and statistical software. So in our history, we have to put this milestone. 1955, the first mainframe, commercial mainframe, so it's a real innovation. A real innovation is something that you put into the market, right? ELEA 9003 is the first mainframe based on transistor. There was the IBM 608, but we are face to face, you know? This is a very interesting story. 1955. 1965, the first personal computer. So for the first time on your desktop, you can design an algorithm and implement with this machine that introduced for the first time conditional jump. You already have calculators where you memorize a sequence, but with a sequence, you cannot design an algorithm. You just a sequence. For an algorithm, you need to design sequence, fork, decisions, loops. So the three fundamental blocks of any programming. But at the core of this, there is the conditional jump. So for the first time, the conditional jump is in the hands of the person on your desktop with Olivetti 1965, the Olivetti Programma 101. And this is the Wall Street Journal announcing that Olivetti is selling the first personal computer in the United States. That's me with the designer of the Olivetti Programma 101. And 1971, in the history, this is another, let's say, milestone in the history of computing, microprocessor. Without microprocessors, it would be impossible to design personal computers. So this was the basis on the main components. The first was based on 4 bits. Federico Faggin is the designer. And Federico Faggin, when he was 20 years old, was working at Olivetti Electronics Labs. Then he moved in Silicon Valley and happens to design the Intel 4004, the first microprocessor based on 4 bits. And like all Italians, is creative, and he put the initial FF on the microprocessor. So he signed the microprocessor, Federico Faggin. The internet. Probably the main achievement in technology area of the last century. There is no central point of control, no central point of failure, and is the idea of a decentralized network, okay? Each node is connected to all the other nodes. There is no center. So all IP addresses are equal, let's say. So this is the internet. You can reach any place on the planet just jumping from one routers to the other. Then 1983, the Olivetti personal computer, another achievement of this history, in the history of personal computing. And then 1981, the World Wide Web, where this is the real opening of this planetary network to all kinds of people. Before 1989, only researchers were using the internet. But after 1989, I start getting emails from my uncle So because she was able to send email to me. Now, the history of the internet changed with this act. The US Congress in 1996 approved the Telecommunication Act. The network up to that time was used mainly for research, you know. This is the big jump toward a commercial network, okay? So the network became a marketing tool after this. And the three main characteristics of a Telecommunication Act is deregulation. So we started looking at merging each other, and we got the big tech now, the tax. And the third point, but probably is the most important, they are not responsible for the content. They are not, they operate, the online services are not responsible for the content. So these three main, let's say, main points of Telecommunication Acts gave the opening of the flourishing, or some, I will say, of this new market. But as we know, in the governance of complex system, market and technology are okay, but are not enough. We need the law and education. But that act, as a result, gave it the main power of shaping society, as we said in the beginning, to market and technology. And now we are trying to arrange some limits to this strong power of market technologies. So, to sum up the three eras of computing. The mainframe era, where you have terminals with just input, output, and storage and processing was concentrated on the data center. Then we have the second era, the personal computer, the 1965 Olivetti P101, where you have all the components of computing, input, storage, processing, output, and network in your hands. And now we are in the third era of computing, where back to the future, we have again storage and processing on the other side. In our hands, we have just input and output, just touch screens. Without a connection, we can do nothing. Yes, we can play Tetris, we can do some local things, but we can't execute nothing without a connection to the real power that is concentrated on the other side. So, if you remember the motto of the internet, all IP are equal, here we have the new motto. All IP addresses are equal, but some IP addresses are more equal than others. You remember the Big Brother. So, this new architecture needs a device for collecting data. And after 2007, we got this device. Now we have 5 billion of people connected to the new architecture of information technologies. And in 2018, we put let's say the era of doubling, we call it, the zettabyte era. In only 1 year, we produced the same amount of data of the entire history up to 2018. So the zettabyte era. And now we are, of course, out of scale, of this scale. So mountains of data. And what is the use for this amount of data? Mainly for marketing purpose. But the business model of online platform is very simple. You have access for free, right? To a lot of applications for free. You pay with your data, but you don't pay any money. How they can get you connected? Because the business model is you have to stay connected, and they got money from advertiser, right? This is the advertising market. And they try to keep you always on, always connected. How? Well, with the personalized algorithms that personalize the interface for you, social control, 24/7 influence, and so-called artificial intelligence. They recognize you and put you into the so-called bubble. So they were able to create what we call addiction by design. We are now living a lot of people that are addicted to this kind of interface. And this is the result. Let's say after 25 years after the Telecommunication Act, remember the Telecommunication 1996? Indeed, this act was able to give, to open a completely new market scenario where the top 10 companies in any market, top 10 companies in any market in the world, 7 out of them are the big tech. 5 based in the United States, 2 based in China. Welcome to the third era of computing, where the concentration of power was never seen before. You know? Even in the Middle Age, we got empires, of course, but now we have only 2 organizations on the planet that have the computing power and the storage for, let's say, selecting this kind of new algorithms, or what we call algorithms that refine, that calibrate themselves with a lot of data. So remember the beginning of our discussion, technology is not neutral, technology and society co-shape each other. So the question, what kind of society do we want? What kind of society we are going to create with this concentration of power? This is a good question. Of course, artists are very able to, in one picture, to give the idea of the era that we are living in, these Bansky mobile lovers. And, but the main researchers that was able to clarify what's going on is Shoshana Zuboff, in my point of view. Because she said that in our civilization, information civilization, the main question about knowledge. And so she put the question, who has the knowledge? Who decides who has the knowledge? Who decides who has the knowledge? So this is the main content of this fundamental book, The Surveillance Capitalism, that is explaining very well what's going on now. And so we are now living in current days. Yesterday, the main researcher of Google, the main researcher of Google resigned, left the company. Why? You know, the main researchers. Because he was putting this question, what we are doing here? What we are doing here is the question of today with you. I would like to elaborate on this question. So these new algorithms that are dynamic algorithms that collect all data of the network, re-elaborate, recalibrate their gigantic network. ChatGPT-4 is based on 100,000 billions of parameters. Who ever written a program with 100,000 billions of variables? No humans is able to. But how many companies has the power of running this kind of algorithms? Only 2. Google and Microsoft, we know the names. Okay. What is the risk? Well, bad information, disseminated completely out of context, misinformation, perceived and retransmitted as being true, but is false. Disinformation, that is false information with explicit intention of deceiving people. Polarizing opinion. This is what is going on the network. This is one of the very recent example of this experimental ChatGPT that you can access and test yourself online. So the main civil rights organization in the United States is 2 weeks ago, was in April 18. Was releasing this kind of open letter saying we have to reflect on what we are doing in this area because we risk democracy, we risk the relationship with the consumer, the inequality, worsening inequality in society, the worker rights, and also the environmental concern. That is another area of the debate that is under discussion. In order to calibrate these kind of algorithms, you need a huge amount of ChatGPT, so the generation before ChatGPT-4, for training, let's say, the network. They were consuming in one session the amount of CO2 generated by 5 cars in their entire lifetime. So there is also an environmental impact of this new huge concentration of computing power. So this is the first, let's say, provocation for the conversation. The first, if you have any question, I will be happy to have a dialogue with you. But before, I would like to touch the second point, the artificial intelligence, so-called artificial intelligence. And I would like to start from this one. So in our domain, in computer science, we have not a definition of artificial intelligence. It's not defined. It's a term used by journalists, but it's a collection of different areas of research, interesting, by the way, most of them. I'm a technology historically, but the main result of this collection of research, just to give you a more light dimension of this debate. Well, 1996, humans lost against computer chess, but not a standard humans like me, the world championship, Kasparov. In 2011, we lose at Jeopardy, a quiz game where you have to find the question, one of the most difficult ones. IBM and Watson was able to beat these humans. 2016, we generated a painting by analyzing all the painting from Rembrandt in very, very details, in 3D details. And then just say, well, why don't you produce for us a new painting? This was the result. All the experts that examined this painting were surprised by the quality of this painting. It's very difficult to distinguish from the original. In 2017, we lost at poker. That is quite complicated game. Yeah? 2017, we lose at Go. It's more complex than chess. 2017, we got the universal translator. You put an earbud, and it translates for you from 37 languages in real time. 2019, you remember the Turing test, the imitation game? Now we have machines that are able to entertain you for more than 1 hour, and you cannot distinguish if there is a machine or a human on the other side. So the imitation game is over. And now we have ChatGPT. We have this new generation of new algorithms, dynamic algorithms that calibrate themselves with a lot of data. But again, only 2 organizations on the planet has this capability of storing and processing this amount of data. And this is a kind of a poster produced by our colleagues in Karlsruhe University. And, but from my point of view, it's the most complete idea of what's going on inside ChatGPT, for example. When you have all the data selection, when you collect data sets. But again, who are the owner of those data sets? Where they get these data sets? what kind of bias contains those data sets? What kind of knowledge contains this data set? Then you select these data sets. And by the way, there are also human intervention in this phase. So it's not completely automated, this process. So there's a lot of manual work to do. Then the learning algorithms, where you have to decide what kind of neural network architecture to use, what kind of refinement to train this network. Then you have the model. Once you have the model, you can use the model for classification or generation. So here is more easy. In the training phase, you build the model. In the classification phase, you give an input, say, is this a cat? Yes, this is a cat. In this prediction, you give an input hint, and the machine generates a sentence, a picture, whatever it is. So, and I will stop here with this picture that give you an idea of what's going on right now. This is a logarithmic scale, the number of parameters in billions of parameters, and this is auto scale, this GPT-4, and this is the lambda Google. And we have two different questions here. The social impact of this technology and the environmental impact of this technology. And back to the beginning, what kind of society do we want? I will stop here. Thank you very much. I try to stay in 45 minutes. But we'll be happy to have a dialogue with you.
Democratic challenges. You spoke about the limits of computer and the democratic challenges are still up to human beings and to governments.
Yeah.
Is there anything that has, government can do to stop these big players like Google or Microsoft in using the data against us and against democratic system, because this is a big challenge. And I'm not talking only of this information, but access to healthcare, access to, whatever comes in our everyday life and whatever governments are meant to provide to their citizens. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for this question, because this is when we are talking about this delegation to market and technologies, was exactly this point. After 1996, with the Telecommunication Act, we recognize that the market and technology, we delegate to market and technology, something that should be, of course, based also on market technology, but not alone. We need a role also of the law, the society, the framework. 2 weeks ago, the Italian Authority for Privacy decided to stop this game. And a lot of people say, hey, you want to stop innovation, you are against innovation. No, we want to discuss. We want to have a role in this game, because we cannot delegate to just market and society, because as one important Italian lawyer, Stefano Rodotà, was saying, in the Wild West, only the strongest will survive, win. But we need also another domain where I'm working more in the education side. So we need to know these kind of things are covered by secrets. We cannot delegate science to secret. Science, by definition, is open, on the shoulder of the giants. What does it mean? That I can work on top of other knowledge and produce new knowledge. But this knowledge is secret. How they design the data set, how they select the data set, how design the neural network architecture, how they change the parameter during the training, it's a secret. So can we delegate, do we want to delegate to a secret the future of education of our children and so on? So this is a big question. And Europe is trying to very late, to regain some, but in this area, the main risk that I see is that, of course, technology is useful for producing interesting results in analyzing complex systems. You know, for analyzing complex systems, it would be impossible for humans to simulate something like this. You know, it's a system that we simulate with NetLogo. Probably you know the language for simulating complex systems, where you have billions of components interacting, but we know all the details of the models. We know, for example, that analyzing a lot of data about humans, we can find interesting clustering, for example, for diabetes. No? We found that there are some clusters that got retinopathy, some clusters that got cardiovascular disease, some other neurological disease. So this is interesting for analyzing big data, but it's just a correlation. You should not confuse correlation with causation, because correlation gives you an interesting hint. Then you have to go to the lab and make experiments, as Galileo was saying. You need an experiment and go inside what's going on. Correlation is not enough. Correlation is the starting point. And again, this is somebody is theorizing the end of theory. We don't need theories. We just, the data speak by themselves. But what kind of data? Who gives you the data? But the main risk, from my point of view, is the illusion of delegating to machines the third step. From machines are useful for forecast, previdere. Of course. I can see in advance, and of course this for weather forecasting, for health, is very useful. For prediction, predicere, is more engaging. You take more responsibility, you know, you say something, not just forecast. But here, for my point of view, there is a threshold that we should not cross. That is prescription. The machine prescribes, and we obey. So we are automating choices that should be in the hands of humans. As you said, some choices must be part of democracy. So we should discuss in an open way what to do where we have complex choices to make. We cannot delegate democracy. We have a lot of examples of choices that are very delicate. You are in a trial, you are the judge. You want to automate, you will be very quick. Huh? So one of the researchers that was proposing this distinction between decision, Joseph Weizenbaum, in Computer Power Human Reason, is one of fundamental books for this reasoning about this discussion. Deciding is a computational activity. Of course, we can program these kind of things. But not all human situations, not all humans' problems can be analyzed with an algorithm. In some cases, we need to choose. And judgment is not calculation. Judgment is the capacity to choose that ultimately make us humans. So the question is, what are humans in front of a machine? There are some situations where we cannot delegate to machines. Just to give you an example, extreme example, to kill or not kill. We already crossed this threshold. We are automating killing people. And lethal autonomous weapon system, you know, we are going to Geneva and discussing at the international level the ban of these kind of weapons. And of course, there is a campaign, Stop Killer Robots, where I'm part of. And we got the support of International Committee of Red Cross, because they say human life must not be reduced to sensor data and machine calculation. It's a very good example of prescription that should not be delegated to machine. So, previdere, predicere, prescrivere are three different levels. Let's not cross the prescription level. This is my recommendation and my suggestion for the debate. How? With democracy.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for this feast of challenges that you put in front of us. What a day to celebrate the National Day of Science of Italy. I couldn't think of a better way, and thanks to the Italian Embassy as well. Now, even though you put a lot of questions, I think I'll go cognitively. You say ethics. What is ethics in this? You said it's not ethical. You haven't told us what ethical is. What is democracy? Does a creature that has higher intelligence than humans have democratic rights? Every term you refer to is to decide who decides who to kill. We have delegated that in an era where such capabilities were not available. Is this still true? Needless to say that, as you know very well, basically all funding for this in the United States is given by the Defense Department. So it's not only Google and Apple and Microsoft, it's also the Defense Department, because they are the biggest funder of AI in the world. And we don't know what they are, how they are using their models. They don't have it open like to use it like ChatGPT. So I would come back to the questions you stated at the next level, challenging that we need to understand even the terms that you propose that we have to address. What is ethics? What is democracy? Who controls the funding, not the decision, the results of the funding? And a lot of it, as I just stated, is not even in the open. Thank you. I will finish with a joke, actually. When I was a graduate student,
a very interesting
when I was a graduate student, there was a discussion at the seminar at MIT about AI.
Yeah.
Early days,
Yeah.
Minsky and all these people.
Yeah, AI is just an example.
And somebody raised before the question. At that time, everybody laughed.
Yeah.
Said, if such a machine develops, this is way back then, is it ethical to pull off the plug?
The question is, we cannot automate ethics. The dream on the background of this shift, there's a shift here from prevedere, predire, prescrivere, forecast, prediction, prescription, is not me, it's the machine. I delegate to an artifact a huge responsibility in this case, but it's, in a way, I'm not more in the picture. The humans are out of the picture, but as you said, humans are in the picture, because who's financing? And somebody is thinking about, well, we will incorporate ethics into machines. Algorithmics, somebody is talking about algorithmics. But what does it mean? In autonomous cars, we have incorporated moral rules inside the software. Wow. Is the rules of Kant? Is the rules of Spinoza? The rules of John Stuart Mills? Is it consequentialism? Kantian? What kind of... So we will have a knob where you can show us, now let's go to Larnaca with Kant, driving my car. And there will be an ethics knob. So what does it mean to ethics is the irreducible question for humans. But what will happen when we follow some rules, you follow some rules, they follow some rules? When we meet, we clash sometimes. We fight. We kill each other sometimes. But we should discuss. After the Second World War, we should discuss. We have the United Nations for solving conflicts, right? We should. So some questions are irreducible. So ethics, we cannot delegate ethics. And if somebody is trying to go in this direction, we should discuss openly about this. We should debate. Then there is another scientific story. As I said before, science is by definition on the shoulder of the giants. Newton wrote on the shoulder of the giants. And of course, we have to discuss about open knowledge. Because science is by definition exchanging idea. I give you one idea, you give to me one idea. I enter in this process with one idea, I going out with two ideas, right? So knowledge multiply by freely exchanging knowledge. Why we build CERN in Geneva? CERN is one of the best examples of exchanging knowledge in an area where it was very difficult for each country to develop this area of research because it was expensive. Why don't we think also in this area where we have very fundamental question, a very important investment to make for going on in this area of research, and open this, make like a CERN for dedicated to this kind of research. This is my position in this difficult question, very interesting question. Yes, I put a lot of questions because ethics is about question, right? Irreducible.
Thank you very much.
Very invigorating talk. Now, if you take the history of technological achievements of the last 100 or so years, and you look at the legacy, let's look at there are many good things that I want to say, but nevertheless, we're able during the 20th century, 19th and 20th century, essentially through the technological achievements to destroy the environment.
We're in Anthropocene.
Right. So we destroyed the environment, and now we are taking corrective measures and set time limits and so on to become green. Okay. Now, with the advent of the digital transformation, more or less, we are essentially precipitating a massive social transformation, the speed of which we've never actually experienced in humankind. Never. Within a short period of time. I mean, you showed that picture of the two people hugging each other at the back, each one watching Facebook this week. So, and I wonder therefore, there are two things that hold together human beings. One is their DNA, and the other is their cultural DNA. So we are destroying now the second one. The first one we can't touch it yet. So the question is, if somebody pulls the plug to Facebook, let's just for a minute pull the plug of Facebook or Twitter, what will happen in the world? To finish it off, today we had a discussion with at a similar meeting about this, and I made the following comment. Elon Musk presses the button, and within milliseconds, economic decisions are taken, people are formulating opinions, and I want to remind people that it took Hitler 15 years to to 42%. Now, with the power, however, of social media, whatever we define democracy is question. But nevertheless, we are moving into an era that people also taking decisions, and some of them will be taking decisions about these things. Will be taking those decisions by pressing buttons to change social perspective without saying much, simply through the image. So I want you to comment on that, please. Thank you.
Well, another interesting question, very difficult to comment on, but it's, we are in an era where in the Anthropocene is putting humans in front of challenges we have never seen before, where we need to reach a level of collaboration at the planetary level that we have never seen. Climate change is one good example. We cannot solve in one country. We need to collaborate at planetary level. So the planet is enforcing us to collaborate. You know? But if we delegate too much to technology and to market, we are going to a different direction that is not collaborate, but competition. And in some areas, competition is good. In some areas, it's not good. For example, it's impossible, like the CERN in Geneva. We collaborate in CERN in Geneva. In science, we collaborate. Science is collective mission, it's collective adventure. And yes, if you unplug today Facebook, probably a lot of people will have some disease due to addiction. But we have to realize this kind of new disease, mental disease, no? It's an addiction. That is another discussion about the rules, the norms, and education. Why? It's another question for you. Why in the real world, if I distribute substances, materials that create addiction, narcotics, are strictly ruled, right? Why, if I distribute addiction in the virtual world? Well, the United States Congress said you are not responsible for the content, 1996. Why, in the virtual world, we don't apply the same rules of the physical world? In the physical world, if you distribute something, alcohol, narcotics, they create addictions, you have to follow strict rules, right? In the virtual world, not. So this is another question interesting to put on the table of democracy. So back to your comments. Yes, we have to challenge big challenges, like climate change, that will enforce us to collaborate. This challenge probably is on the similar level. It's a planetary challenge for all human beings. And if you read the words of this is one of the main experts, you know, it's like it's very similar to the words that Einstein was writing about atomic power in the 50s. Yesterday, the researcher of Google that left the very important jobs, if you read the word, are very similar to the word of Einstein. So yes, we are reaching a level, we are living in a very difficult times, but very interesting time. It happens to us that we have to find new way of working together, let's say. Otherwise, we will not be able to face this level of challenges. And if we need to regulate these technologies, we have many examples of technology. At the beginning of the 20th century, we have the inventor of cars. Now, one was in Torino, with new cars, new technology. There were no rules. You can drive the car without driving license, just nothing. After a while, we introduce some. So technology by itself may be good, but we need to find a new relationship with the society. This is the tricky point. Up to now, they said, disrupt first, ask question later. No, we as Europe, at least we should say, no, wait a minute. Let's discuss what we are going to disrupt. Because if we are disrupting democracy, we have to think very seriously. I don't know if I replied to your question, comments to your, but yes, somebody say, well, there is also China, yes, but it's a completely different model. Probably they are going, let's say, just to simplify, it's just oversimplification. Here we have big business. On the other side, we have big state. Why not in Europe we talk about big democracy? Based on our history, our cultural things, and Kant, big democracy, and discuss this, also this kind of technology. I accept the challenge of teaching to computer ethics to engineers, so my challenge is very hard, you know, because they are problem solvers, so no questions. But when at the end of my course, when I discuss with the students, I got very, very satisfying comments as a feedback from them. So probably also when we educate engineers or technical people, we need to think also to put together not just technical subjects, but also human science. So we talk about engineers slash philosophers.
Thank you very much for this very interesting reflection. And I wanted to comment on your red line there, the prescribe. Yes. Yeah, the red line you said we shouldn't cross to go to the machine.
The red line, from my point of view, is this one.
Yes, that's what I wanted to comment, because maybe we are already crossing it. And you're making some examples when I go to the airport. Who decides whether I cross the border and checks my passport is a machine. Of course, there's a human next to the machine, but the project is probably to remove that human in the future. When I go to a public office or in a bank, who has had the experience of the clerk telling me, yes, you're right, but the computer doesn't give me that option? And another example, I've lived in the UK for several years, and in the UK, if I want to contact my energy company, I can only talk to a chatbot. There is no human who wants to talk to me. So these are a few examples. Of course, there's a human somewhere who can pull the plug, but for me, for the citizen, that option doesn't exist. And so my question is, have we not already crossed that red line? And maybe there is another red line that will come in the future, will be when there will be no human to pull the plug, because the machine will have complete power over yeah.
Well, yes, we have many examples. I saw the extreme example of killing, you know, the lethal autonomous weapons. But also in very simple technology, we already crossed this automation of decision. Airbags. Airbags? Airbags. In your car you have airbags, huh? We have. And, but before installing airbags, we have a long discussion, remember? A lot of testing, simulations. So we as a society, we could say something. You know what I mean? So it's a democratic decision in a way. We're a standard organization. There was a long, what we are risking here is this prescription without discussion. So the decision of crossing this threshold is a choice. It's not a decision. It's not a machine that decides to go there. We have to cross this threshold very carefully, only in cases like the airbag, where there is a big discussion, a big democratic discussion. Yes, in this case, it makes sense to automate this kind of process. In other cases, no. I give you an example. Another example, we should not cross this automation. You are a person in trouble, you go to social services, and social services provide you a touchscreen, not the real people to communicate with, where you can explain, to look in the eyes, explain your problem, ask for their, you put into the game your dignity, you know? Is this a wise decision to delegate this to a prescription machine? I will say no. In some country, we are delegating social services to a touchscreen, to a machine on the corridor. You know? So this is a trivial example. So the crossing is a choice, and as a choice is in the hands of humans. So it's not the machine. Somebody has made these choices. So we should put in question these choices. And of course, it's a political question, of course. Who has the power of making these choices?
I want to bring you back, Norberto, to Costa's question, because I think that's the key point. That's about who wants us to live this kind of, in this kind of reality. So if this is the result of a long-term thinking and a long-term process, we were talking at the lunchtime about the Van Nevar bush, as we may think was the paper published in the Atlantic in the Memex in 1945, where what we are discussing today was clearly described 80 years ago. So we are living in that environment, and probably, the role of Van Nevar Bush wasn't understood as an historical role in terms of how the United States have been building this kind of pattern. And I think that for about 40 years, this was given to research, to play. So for 40 years, what you don't want to call artificial intelligence, but this kind of cognitive, let's say, technologies have been played in this environment, which was a free environment. Then with the Telecommunication Act, the market power was released, and this is the US way, if you want, which was copied by China. So let's the capital societies, the capital companies and the capitalistic societies to play a role of accelerator of this maturity. And now this is back to power, because this is serving defense. And I think that Ukraine is a very good playground for all this stuff, because they are testing everything you might test there. And the clash between states and China is clearly shown by your picture about the companies that are, let's say, leading this wave. So if this is, in a very short, a long story, how Europe can play in the middle. If we have a really different culture we can play with, I think that, Olivetti has been crushed in this process, because it was part of the, was one of the players, and then it was decided it couldn't be an Italian player to have a role in this. But in my opinion, this is the reason why I studied Olivetti and I tried to understand the model, was really different. So it was a technological company, but with a DNA which was a human-centered and social DNA. So is there any room for getting back and starting and having another option, or we are just watching the game between United States and China, and we will be in there, let's say, you called it the no sphere, which will be either Chinese or American?
Well, at the end of my course, my students put me a question. Excuse me, Professor. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? And they say, I am post-pessimistic. So I try to say
Experienced professor.
So, in short, there are a lot of things to do. Let's start doing those kind of things. But we need to understand what's going on before acting. So it's very important to discuss in audience like this between technicians, social people, to discuss what's going on, to understand what's happening, and then decide collectively as a democratic. The question that you put at the end is it possible a responsible innovation?
Yeah. And if we are able to build this...
So since I'm teaching computer ethics at Polytechnic of Torino, this is the core question for me. And I will go back to this one, trying to simplify these low-tech things. So what does it mean, good, clean, and fair? Good, how we design systems for starting that are socially desirable, so human-centered, starting from the human needs. First question. Second question, are we developing a clean ICT, so digital systems that are taking into account the impact of those systems? Fair ICT, are we building those things? Because we need also to manufacture those things. The hardware, somebody has to build hardware. Somebody has to take mineral from the ground. And what are the working conditions of those people? In many cases, these are unacceptable for our standards. So we need to question also this side of technology. This means responsible innovation. So in short, responsible innovation is when you are designing a system, you know, in Europe, we are talking about Europe. European project have to strictly follow the RRI mantra, no? The responsible research and innovation. What does it mean, responsible research and innovation? Well, first of all, identify all the stakeholders and design the stakeholders network. A lot of our engineers have no idea who are the people, the users involved in this. They are concentrated in their little toy. Engage with those stakeholders, so discuss with them what you are designing, up to make the extreme, participatory design. Participatory design is a methodology of design. Reflect with those, include those considerations, and try to anticipate the impact of what you're doing, and then act and respond. I was very lucky, I would say, in my life because I had the opportunity of working with Olivetti, and in Olivetti there were two main things. In my history, I entered this company in 1974. So 50 years ago, I learned that first, there is no difference between art, design, science, and technology. Everything is connected. And you know, Olivetti was one of the main designers in the history. Second point, the goals of the companies are not just profits. So the question, what are the other goals? And you know, this is the main reason why UNESCO was nominating Olivetti and Ivrea, the industrial city of 20th centuries, because of the idea of community of Adriano Olivetti around the factory. So we go back to political economy, Adam Smith, but we got also a different idea of economy, civil economy. Antonio Genovesi, the first teacher of economy in Federico II in Naples, where was saying, Adam Smith would say, economy is competition. Antonio Genovesi would say, economy is about cooperation. We work for the community. We involve all the people. So the best example of civil economy is the idea of Adriano Olivetti. So it's possible? Yes, we were living there. My first years of working was there. For 25 years I've been working there. So I've seen the utopia, the concrete utopia. We should maintain this dream, from my point of view. We should maintain this dream that otherwise we lose the goal of our humanity, say. And also the innovation, by the way, also of the innovation. Because it's not, was very innovative as I said, the first mainframe, the first personal computer.
So let's go to the year 2050. In the future. At that time, we will probably be at ChatGPT 20 or 30 or whatever, or AGI. Point one. Point two, this accessible to everyone, not just through an interface technology, but it may be implanted there somehow. So we have citizens that actually are instant access to the whole of human knowledge. And they can analyze things, and they can solve problems using the whole of human knowledge at the speed of Chat GPT 50 or whatever. So what are the moral rules that can regulate these very advanced creatures whose actually genetic makeup may be modified so that they can live 120 or 50 years? We're still too long, but probably there. So, you know, I think we're getting to this world, like it or not. And I think that we'll have to consider morality from the point of view of, you know, Aristotle or Plato thought that the more advanced you are mentally, the more moral you become, and the more ethical you become, taking care of others and so on. So this is actually the positive side of this development.
The more knowledge, as I said, open knowledge,
Yeah.
it's necessary for human, you know, why we set up education systems? Because we believe that by educating new generations, we build a better society. But when we educate, we collect knowledge, right? We disseminate knowledge. Now the question is, who are controlling these knowledge distribution systems? Because 90% of people, when are looking for something, go there. 95 people. And 95 people read only the first 3-4 results of this list. And they ask to this company, excuse me, what is the criteria of this ranking? They say, it's a secret. So I am with you, but only if knowledge is open.
Yes.
And one of the main thinkers who are reasoning about this is Elinor Ostrom, is the first woman winning the Nobel, they call the Nobel Prize in Economy, 2009. And Elinor Ostrom was talking about you know, how communities are cultivating commons, physical commons. But she ended up also in analyzing knowledge. So only if knowledge is managed in an open way, and we can show a lot of examples. One of the best examples is OpenStreetMap, designing maps in a collaborative way at planetary level. You know, you have all the details. You can have also a fountain in front of this building because you insert this fountain, like Wikipedia, like this kind of platform where knowledge is open. It's not a secret in the hands of somebody. So this is the key point of science and of education. Also, the Italian Constitution says that the knowledge is must be free. Yeah. And so I'm with you, but the key point is now we have in 2 weeks, the last weeks, very good last weeks, we got more than 300,000 people connected to 2 platforms. One was managed by Google, was managed by Microsoft. So, and if you ask to them, can I have a look how you build this map? You see selection data set, algorithms, etc. We say no. So there are some experiments in building exactly the same technology, the same kind of technology, so large language models in an open way. This is very interesting for science, and I encourage young scientists in working in this area. There is a collective in the Paris 7 University launching Bloom, no? Probably you're familiar with them. That is exactly the same thing, but with this approach.
Yeah.
So this is more close to the real science. That is the job of work at the university. Then I'm not against technology, against innovation, against product on the market. But you know that before releasing a product, new things to the market, you need a standardization process, a certification process, an assessment. Not just experimenting with 5 billion of people. This is a gigantic experiment with a planet. So this is the difference. So I agree with you. Good point.
Yes.
Roberto, there were other 2 questions, but I think it's very late. So I've been told I'm a prescriptive Chinese style chairman, but yes, exercise democracy. But I think it's time to close. So if you agree, you might follow up in the. I think there is something to drink, or in any case, I mean, you are not running out. So thanks, Norberto.